Hey everybody, I'm Jack. This is Raw Tropical Living. Thanks for joining me today. Hope y'all had a good weekend out there. Sorry I didn't get a video out to you yesterday. I went and visited some family, caught up with some first cousin of mine, and yeah, I just kind of got back in late. Just didn't have time to do a video, but anyhow, today I thought we'd start the week out on how much fat on a raw food diet. Guys, I do videos every day, so if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please go hit that subscribe button now. Then click on the little bell and check send notifications so you'll stay subscribed to the channel. I listed one women's top this morning of the tie-dye. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook now. I've got a page over there, Uncle Jack's Tie-Dye. So everybody that's been asking me, sending me messages, you can find them over there. I've kind of gotten back to reading. Haven't read any of my books on my Kindle in a while, so I just decided every day to kind of start going through, or maybe not every day, but just on a regular basis. I just kind of pick them up and read certain sections. And you know, guys, I've always recommended Brenda Davis, both her books, Becoming Vegan and Becoming Raw. So I was reading a little bit of Becoming Raw because it's been a while, and I thought I'd share this one with you just from her perspective, and it's on the fat, obviously. And I like her approach because she's not preachy, she's not dogmatic, not like, oh, you absolutely have to do this or you should do that. She gives options and she gives information on it, and then you make your own choice. So I'm going to read a little bit from the chapter on fat. Fat, friends and foes. Most people believe that eating too much fat is bad for our health. Fat is viewed as a villain that is instantly deposited on our thighs and belly and in our arteries. You would imagine that fat intake would plummet when a raw vegan diet is adopted. Often, quite the contrary happens. The percentage of calories from fat escalates. Of course, the fat in raw vegan diets differs from that in conventional diets in a number of important ways. Most of it comes from high-fat whole foods such as avocados, nuts, and seeds. If concentrated fats and oils are used, they are usually unrefined, meaning that they are not subjected to the high temperatures that cause the formation of those nasty products of oxidation. The saturated fat in raw vegan diets doesn't come from meat and dairy products. Rather, it primarily comes from coconut and in smaller amounts from nuts, seeds, avocados, and oils. What does all this mean from a practical perspective? Does the high quality of fat in raw food compensate for the relatively high percentage of fat in many raw vegan diets? Are raw diets that contain a lot of olive oil and coconut oil less healthful than those that derive most of their fat from whole foods? In this chapter, we will explore the current issues and controversies concerning fat in the raw vegan diet and provide practical recommendations for fine-tuning both the quantity and quality of fat consumed. Optimal fat intake. Determining optimal fat intake is among the most hotly debated issues in nutrition, and the deliberations are no less steamy in the raw food community. Some high-fruit, low-fat eating plans promote intakes of less than 10% of calories from fat. Gabrielle Cousens, author of There is a Cure for Diabetes, recommends a fat intake of 10 to 20% of calories. The greater majority of raw food authorities suggest more liberal fat intakes. Let's explore the ups and downs of fat intake and their practical implications. Ultra-low-fat diets. Some of the most highly respected vegetarian and vegan proponents in the medical community advocate diets providing no more than 10% of calories from fat. Promoters of high-fruit diets in the raw food community concur, at least as far as total fat goes. The primary argument used by very low-fat advocates is that fat increases the risk of disease, particularly chronic diseases such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers. Researchers have clearly demonstrated that by reducing fat calories to no more than 10% and dramatically reducing harmful fats, heart disease can not only be prevented, but it can be very successfully treated and reversed in the majority of patients. No drug, therapy, or surgery can claim as such. Such diets have also been shown to provide more effective therapy for people with type 2 diabetes than the conventional diet advocated by the American Diabetes Association. While there is not yet peer-reviewed research examining the effects of very low-fat raw vegan diets on patients with coronary artery disease and diabetes, there are compelling anecdotal reports. It appears as though these diets produce results that are even more powerful than those reported with conventional vegan diets. This is not surprising when one considers that raw vegan diets go a step further and eliminate most processed foods. Both the raw food and conventional low-fat proponents advise against the use of concentrated fats and oils. These foods are not necessary in a healthful diet, and their elimination increases the nutrient density of the diet. However, many also advise against the use of higher fat plant foods such as avocados, olives, nuts, and seeds. Studies that have examined the health effects of consuming these and other higher fat whole plant foods are overwhelmingly positive. Eliminating or severely restricting high-fat plant foods, particularly when following a raw vegan diet, may prove a disadvantage. The most important justifications for the inclusion of higher-fat plant foods are outlined below. Low-fat diets consist predominantly of fruit with the addition of smaller amounts of greens. These are highly nutritious foods. However, when they are consumed exclusively, the diet may fall short in a number of nutrients, including protein and a variety of trace minerals. Higher fat plant foods, such as nuts and seeds, can help to bring nutrient intakes closer to recommended levels. This is less of an issue in conventional low-fat vegan diets where legumes and grains are regularly consumed. Number 2, the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and phytochemicals can be reduced in very low-fat diets compared to diets containing moderate amounts of dietary fat. The absorption of certain nutrients, iron and zinc in particular, is already lower in plant-based diets. Consequently, further reductions could potentially compromise nutritional status, especially for vulnerable individuals. Although studies suggest that relatively small amounts of fat are required for the absorption of carotenoids, there is some evidence that more may be required when raw rather than cooked foods are eaten, as food processing and heating break down the plant cell walls and promote the release of these nutrients. Fat-soluble nutrients and phytochemicals play vital roles in protecting health and reducing the risk of disease. So consumers are generally well advised to consume enough fat to ensure the optimal absorption of these nutrients. Number 3, very low-fat diets may not provide sufficient essential fatty acids. In conventional low-fat vegan diets, grains provide adequate omega-6 fatty acids. However, intakes of omega-3 fatty acids average only about 1/4 of recommended intakes, unless omega-3 rich nuts or seeds are permitted. In raw vegan diets, fruits and greens tend to predominate. When these foods are used exclusively, omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids are consumed in almost equal amounts, depending on the selection of fruits. While this provides an optimal balance of essential fatty acids, the quantities of essential fatty acids might not be sufficient. In a 2,000-calorie diet, the intakes of 2 essential fatty acids average approximately 1 gram each. In a 2,000-calorie diet, the intakes of the 2 essential fatty acids average approximately 1 gram each. This is below both recommended and adequate intakes. In order to boost total essential fatty acid intake, seeds and/or walnuts would need to be added to the diet. To maintain fat intake at less than 10% of calories, not more than 1 ounce of seeds and walnuts could be consumed in a 2,000-calorie diet. A combination of seeds high in omega-3 and omega-6 seeds could be selected, such as flax seeds and pumpkin seeds, or seeds and nuts containing a healthful balance of the 2 essential fatty acids, such as hemp seeds and walnuts. This would bring total intakes to a healthful range. Very low-fat diets tend to be bulky. That is, there are few calories in a large amount of food, providing insufficient calories for some people, particularly children. Individuals with high energy needs, such as pregnant and lactating women or competitive athletes, may also have difficulty meeting energy requirements on very low-fat diets. High-fat diets and health. The greater majority of nutrition and health experts, including those who advocate raw diets, suggest more liberal fat intakes. Many believe that determining an acceptable quantity of fat depends on the quality of the fat consumed. Some promote high food intakes using Mediterranean-rich diets as evidence of the benefits of diets rich in fat, especially olive oil. In the raw food community, higher fat diets are common. Mediterranean-style diets provide a compelling argument that the quality of fat trumps the quantity of fat as a predictor of health outcomes. However, even when the fat is predominantly good, in quotes, monosaturated and polyunsaturated fat, high intakes of concentrated fats and oils may increase health risk. Some of the primary concerns are outlined below. Concentrated fats and oils are high in calories, approximately 120 calories per tablespoon, and low in nutrients. When raw diets contain liberal amounts of fats and oils, more nutrient-dense foods, that is, foods with more nutrients per calories, may be crowded out. This can make it difficult to meet recommended intakes for nutrients, especially for those that are already marginal in raw diets. For example, trace minerals such as iron and zinc. The typically low caloric intakes of raw food vegans add to the challenge. As nutrients per calorie become even more significant, concentrated fats and oils generally contribute little more than calories, essential fatty acids, and vitamin E. It makes more sense to obtain these nutrients from nutrient-dense whole foods that offer protein, unrefined carbohydrates, fiber, and a host of vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals. High-fat diets have been linked to chronic medical conditions such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, gallbladder disease, and some cancers. The bulk of evidence against high-fat diets is specific to diets rich in saturated fats and/or trans fatty acids. Trans fatty acids are not consumed in raw vegan diets, and saturated fat intakes are generally low. However, there is some evidence that diets very high in fat, 42 to 50% of calories from fat, may increase several markers of blood coagulation and thrombosis, potentially elevating the risk of heart disease. High-fat diets may result in increased oxidative damage to body tissues. Free radicals are more likely to react with polyunsaturated fats, unstable molecules. So people who consume greater amounts of these fats, especially from concentrated oils, could be more susceptible to oxidative damage. Oxidative damage has been linked to numerous disease processes, including arthritis, age-related diseases, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and neurological disorders. There is some evidence suggesting that when high-fat diets are consumed, fewer essential fatty acids are converted to the more biologically active, highly unsaturated fatty acids compared to lower fat diets. Adequate conversion of essential fatty acids is important in many aspects of health and disease. Okay, so for the current recommended intakes for fat, most major health organizations concur that fat intake for most people should range from 15 to 35% of calories. They also agree that saturated fats, trans fatty acids, and cholesterol should be restricted. While experts recognize the potential adverse health effects of fat intakes that are too high or too low, optimal fat intake depends on your age, your state of health, and the quality and balance of the fats you consume. If you're very physically active or have a fast metabolism, that is, you require a lot of calories to maintain your body weight, you might find it preferable to aim for total fat intakes at the higher end of the suggested range. If you're overweight, have a slow metabolism, or have a chronic disease such as heart disease, you will likely find intakes near the lower end of the range to be more health supportive. Fat intakes below 15% of calories from fat have proved to be safe and effective in the treatment and reversal of chronic disease. However, they are not generally advised for healthy individuals. Fat intakes above 35% of calories are not normally suggested, as they may lead to excessive intakes of saturated fat and trans fatty acids and insufficient intakes of carbohydrates and fiber. Leading health organizations offer varying advice when it comes to amounts of fat to consume. The World Health Organization has set population dietary intake goals for macronutrients. A total fat intake between 15 and 30% of calories is suggested, although it adds that highly active people with diets rich in fruits, legumes, vegetables, and whole grain cereals may sustain a fat intake of up to 35% of calories without risk of unhealthy weight gain. It also recommends that saturated fat intakes be less than 10% of calories, 7% for high-risk populations, and trans fat intakes be less than 1% of calories. In North America, the Institute of Medicine's new dietary reference intakes for energy, carbohydrates, fiber, fat, protein, and amino acids has not set a recommended daily allowance or adequate intake. However, it has set a criterion known as the acceptable macronutrient distribution range. The AMDR, short, for the fat is 20 to 35% of calories for adults, 25 to 30% for children aged 4 to 18, and 30 to 40% of calories for children aged 1 to 3. A gradual transition from the high-fat diet of infancy, 55% of calories during the first 6 months of life, and 40% of calories from 6 to 12 months to childhood is recommended. The report doesn't set maximum levels for saturated fat, cholesterol, or trans fatty acids, as risk increases no matter how much is consumed. However, it recommends eating as little as possible of these and consuming a diet in important essential nutrients. The American Heart Association strongly advises that all Americans over the age of 2 limit to less than 25 to 35% of daily calories, saturated fat to less than 7, trans fat to less than 1, and cholesterol to less than 300 milligrams per day for most people, and less than 200 milligrams per day for people with coronary artery disease. Although the American Diabetes Association does not suggest a range for total fat intake, it does recommend that saturated fat be less than 7% of calories, trans fatty acids be minimized, and cholesterol be kept under 200 milligrams per day for people with diabetes. So, wrapping that up, I like what she does. She always just kind of gives you information, some of the statistics out there, what other people think, and kind of lets you figure it out on your own. Like I say, I'm somewhere in there. I'm probably somewhere in there over the course of the year, probably in the 15% range, anywhere from 10 to 20%. But I'm actually going around 15%, I would guess, these days. Sometimes I actually forget to eat fat. It's not like a matter of I'm limiting fat, but I forget to eat it. But like I say, I really, really recommend this book, Brenda Davis, Becoming Raw. I like to keep books like this on my iPad, on my Kindle, because it just makes a really handy reference. Anytime I'm thinking about something, I can go in there, and I can go in one of her 2 books, and I can find it. So anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed that one today. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great week. Peace.